I didn't ask for a bodyguard, but from the first moment Luca stepped into my space, I knew he wasn't just here to protect me. He was here to stay. This is my story. I found the envelope on the piano bench. No one uses the piano room anymore. Not since Mama died, but the bench was closed, the lid dusted, the music book propped open like someone had been playing, someone who wanted to leave a message. Inside the envelope was a single photo. Me, walking out of the Moretti front gate, head turned, eyes down, alone. No signature, no threat, just that. That's what made it worse. I held the photo between two fingers, careful not to smudge it. It was still warm from the sunlight in the piano room. Did anyone come through the main entrance this morning? I asked one of the guards on duty. He blinked. Only Matteo. And Mr. DeLuca. My stomach twisted. Luca was here? He met with your father. I nodded, but it didn't settle me. When I walked back to my room, I locked the door behind me. It had been 3 years since Papa handed me the reins of the house. The sisters listened to me. The staff answered to me. If something went wrong inside these gates, it was my name that fixed it. So why, when I opened my bedroom drawer to hide the photo, did my hands shake? By sunset, Papa had already made his decision. I was pouring tea for Elena when he called me downstairs, not into his study, into the back gallery, the long hallway with the floor-to-ceiling windows that no one used unless something was serious. Luca DeLuca was already standing there. He didn't look at me when I walked in. He kept his arms folded across his chest. One shoulder leaned against the window frame, like he'd been waiting a while. Isabella, my father said, his voice even. You'll have protection now. I stopped 3 steps into the hallway. I already have protection. You had guards. Now you have Luca. Luca still didn't look at me. He doesn't need to be here, I said. I can handle. You don't need to handle everything, my father said, cutting me off with the kind of softness that always meant final. You're the eldest. That doesn't mean you bleed for all of them. I didn't argue, not because I agreed, but because I knew Luca was still listening. And finally, quietly, he turned his head. His eyes met mine for the first time in nearly a year. Dark, unreadable, steady. I won't get in your way, he said, voice low. I'll just be nearby. Luca had been my father's shadow since we were kids, not like a son, like something colder, quieter, like a soldier who never left. He never talked when he didn't have to, never made jokes, never sat unless someone told him to. The first time I saw him fight, I was 16. It was in an alley behind a restaurant we owned. 2 men had tried to corner Francesca. By the time I got outside, they were already down, and Luca was just standing there with blood on his shirt like it meant nothing. I asked him later why he hadn't told anyone. He'd said, they're not a problem anymore. That was all. Now he was outside my room. He didn't sleep in the house. He stayed in the detached guest wing by the garage. But every time I opened my door, I could feel him near. When I came down the stairs, he'd already be at the base of them. When I turned a hallway corner, he'd be leaning against a wall, arms folded, never speaking, never pushing, just there, watching. Is he seriously still hovering? Sophia whispered to me 3 days later, as we got into the car for a meeting in the city. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Luca slid into the front passenger seat next to the driver. He didn't look back at us, but I could feel him listening. It should have made me feel watched, controlled, but instead, God help me, it made me feel calmer. The meeting ran long. My father was negotiating territory lines with the Bellinis, and I was expected to take notes, even though no one ever actually read them. By the time we left the building, the sun was already low. Luca stayed close. He always walked exactly half a step behind me, like he could intervene from any angle. I hadn't realized I'd come to expect that until it shifted. We were halfway to the car when a motorcycle cut the wrong way up the alley behind us. I didn't hear it first. I felt Luca move. 1 second, his hand was hovering behind me. The next, it was on my waist, pulling me sharply against the side of a delivery truck. The motorcycle zoomed past where I'd been standing, close enough to graze the fabric of my coat. He didn't let go. Are you hurt? His voice was barely audible. My heart was in my throat. No. Don't lie. His hand stayed at my waist, grounding me. You're shaking. I was, not just from fear, from how quickly he moved, from how tightly he held me, from how close his chest was to my back. I'm fine, I whispered. He didn't believe me, but he didn't argue. He just stayed there, arm around me, breath in my hair, until I steadied. That night, I didn't sleep. I told myself it was the adrenaline. the closeness, the shock, but when I finally closed my eyes, I didn't see the motorcycle. I saw the way he'd looked at me after, like touching me had cost him something, like he didn't regret it. The next morning, when I opened my door, I didn't find him standing there. Instead, taped to the wall just beside the frame, was a folded square of paper. I pulled it down. Inside, one sentence. You shouldn't have been alone. Lunga moved into the guest wing that night, not because I asked him to, not even because Papa ordered it. He just showed up, quietly, without bags, without ceremony, like he'd always meant to be there. When I looked out my window around midnight, the light was already on in the suite across the courtyard. One of the guards told me he'd taken the end unit, the one closest to my side of the house. I didn't sleep again, but this time, it wasn't because of fear. The next morning, he was waiting for me in the hallway. Where are you going? He asked, voice low. Breakfast. He didn't move, just matched my pace as I walked. I expected him to talk, to ask something, but he didn't, just stayed slightly behind me, always near. Even in the dining room, he stood by the wall, arms crossed, watching the doorway. No chair, no food, no conversation. He didn't eat unless someone asked. He didn't sit unless ordered. It should have felt like pressure. Instead, it felt like cover. Sophia raised an eyebrow over her coffee. He's nesting, she murmured, nodding toward Luca. He doesn't nest. No, but you do. And he's matching it. I gave her a look. She sipped. I'm just saying, he's too close for neutral. By day 3, I'd memorized the sound of his boots on the floor. Not heavy, just steady, controlled. He never rushed, never ran. But the moment I opened a door, turned a corner, shifted direction, he was already there, like my orbit had become his own. The first time I broke was in the stairwell. It was late. I'd just finished reading the incident report on Francesca's school. Someone had followed her car for 3 blocks the week before. The guard hadn't noticed. We'd only found out because the Ronaldus intercepted the license plate. I was supposed to report it to my father, but all I could do was sit down on the steps, clutching the paper, trying to remember how to breathe. And then he was there. Luca didn't say a word. He didn't ask what was wrong, didn't demand I explain. He just sat down 2 steps below me, facing forward, hands on his knees, head low, close enough to feel his presence, far enough not to crowd me. I didn't speak, neither did he, but something inside me settled, not completely, just enough to stay upright. After a minute, he asked quietly, "Do you want me to tell him?" I looked at the page in my hand, then at him. He didn't look away. "Yes," I whispered. He nodded once. "Then it's done." He didn't wait for thanks. He just stood and walked away. That's the thing about Luca DeLuca. He doesn't comfort with words. He doesn't soothe. He anchors, without touching, without talking. Just presence, just watching, just that constant, unshakable stillness. It was storming the night. Everything cracked. Not just rain. Thunder so loud it shook the floorboards. Lightning so bright it made the hallway lights flicker. I don't scare easily. But storms, when I was little, I used to crawl into Mama's bed and press my face into her side until it passed. She'd hum something low, stroking my back with the rhythm of the thunder. That was before. Now I just sat on the floor of my bedroom closet, knees pulled tight, hands over my ears, trying not to panic. Then, 3 soft knocks. I didn't answer. Isabella. His voice through the door was quiet, lower than thunder. Just enough. I stayed frozen. "I won't come in unless you want me to." I hated how much I wanted to. Another crash of thunder. And then, without thinking, I whispered, "Please." The door opened slow. I didn't move. I couldn't. Luca stepped inside. Didn't speak. Just closed the door behind him and sat against the wall. One leg stretched out, one arm resting on his knee. No sudden movements. Just close enough to see his face in the dark. He waited, like he could do this for hours. I blinked through tears. I know it's stupid. He shook his head once. No, it isn't. Another roll of thunder. I must have flinched, and that was the only time he moved. Just enough to hold out a hand. I took it without thinking. Cold fingers and warm ones. And once I did, I couldn't let go. We didn't speak again, not even when the storm passed. I woke up with my head against his shoulder. We were still in the closet, still on the floor, his jacket around me, my hand still in his. He hadn't moved all night. When I sat up, he looked at me, not startled, not guilty, just steady. I let go of his hand. He stood without sound, took the jacket back, paused at the door. "Do you want me to leave?" he asked softly. I should have said yes. but I shook my head. He nodded and left the room. Later that morning, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. There was a crease on my cheek from the seam of his coat. I didn't smooth it away. From then on, things felt different. He didn't walk half a step behind me anymore. He walked beside me. He didn't wait for my permission to stay near. He just stayed, and I didn't ask him to stop. One afternoon, I found him in the garden. He was supposed to be watching the perimeter. Instead, he was crouched beside the old stone bench Mama used to sit on, looking down at something in the grass. When he heard me approach, he stood slowly. "There's a bird," he said quietly. "Broken wing." I stepped closer. Sure enough, a small black bird, still breathing, barely moving. I looked up at him. "What are you going to do?" He met my eyes. "Whatever you tell me to." Something twisted in my chest. "Can you help it?" He didn't answer, just knelt again, palmed it carefully, like something sacred. "I'll try." I didn't know then that he was talking about more than the bird. That night, I couldn't sleep again, but I didn't sit in the closet. I opened the door, and found him leaning against the hallway wall, arms folded, head tipped back, eyes closed. He didn't open them when he spoke. "Storm coming?" "No," he nodded, but he stayed anyway. There are things I never say out loud. Not to my sisters, not to my father, not even to myself most days, because once I do, they stop being manageable. They turn real, heavy, demanding, and I don't have room for that. But Luca has a way of standing there that makes silence feel possible, safe enough to loosen. That's how it starts. It's late afternoon when it happens. The house is unusually quiet. Sofia is out with Matteo. Elena took Lucia into the city. Francesca is at her lessons. Gianna and Valentina are somewhere I didn't ask about because sometimes it's easier not to know. I'm in the back office, surrounded by paperwork that smells faintly of ink and old wood. Numbers, names, favors owed, and threats half spoken. I've been staring at the same page for 10 minutes when Luca appears in the doorway. He doesn't knock. He never does. "You've been in here too long," he says. I don't look up. "I'm fine." He doesn't respond. That's how I know he doesn't believe me. He comes closer, boots quiet on the rug. I feel him before I see him, like pressure shifting in the room. "Your hand's shaking," he says gently. I look down. It is. I set the pen aside. "It's nothing. It's not nothing if it's hurting you." That's the thing about Luca. He doesn't argue the words. He addresses the truth underneath them. I lean back in the chair and close my eyes. "I don't get to fall apart," I say finally. "Do you know that?" He doesn't answer right away. When I open my eyes, he's crouched beside the desk, forearms resting on his knees, gaze level with mine. "I know," he says. Something in my chest tightens. I didn't expect him to understand. I didn't expect him anything. But he does. "You're the one they look to," he continues, "even when they don't realize it." I swallow. If I stop, everything stops. He watches my face closely, not intrusively, carefully, like he's memorizing how much truth I can handle at once. "You don't have to carry all of it alone," he says. The words are simple. They shouldn't undo me, but they do. I stand abruptly, turning away from him, walking to the window before he can see the way my expression cracks. Outside, the garden is too green, too calm. Birds moving like the world isn't always waiting to strike. My mother used to say the same thing, I say quietly, before she died. I didn't plan to say that. The silence behind me deepens. She used to tell me I wasn't born to be strong for everyone else. I continue, that I could lean, that someone would hold the weight with me. I let out a short breath that's almost a laugh. She was wrong. Luca stands slowly. I feel him behind me, close but not touching. "She wasn't," he says. I turn. "How would you know?" His eyes don't waver. "Because you're still standing, and you shouldn't be." That lands harder than anything else. I sink back into the chair, suddenly exhausted, like my bones are heavier than they should be. "They don't see it," I say. "My sisters. They think I'm just capable, calm, in control." I stare at my hands. They don't see how tired I am. Luca moves then, not toward me, toward the chair across from the desk. He sits. It's the first time I've ever seen him do that without being told. "I see it," he says. I look up sharply. He holds my gaze, steady, certain. "You don't sleep enough. You eat like it's a chore. You keep your shoulders tight even when you're alone." His voice lowers. "You flinch before the sound comes." My throat closes. I watch because it's my job, he adds, but I notice because I care. The word care sits between us, heavy, exposed. I should stop him. I should redirect, ask him to leave. Instead I ask, why? He doesn't hesitate, because if something happens to you, the rest of the family breaks. That's not, and he continues softly, because I don't like the idea of you doing this alone. There it is. Not love, not desire, something quieter, more dangerous. There's a knock at the door. Both of us turn. A guard steps in, apologetic. Miss Moretti, there's been movement near the east gate. I'm on my feet instantly. Which side? Service road. A car slowed, then turned off. Luca is already moving. He steps in front of me without thinking. Stay here, he says. No, he stops, looks back at me. I'm not hiding, I say evenly. I need to know. For a moment I think he'll argue. Instead, he nods once, then stay close. The air outside is cooler, dusk settling low. We don't reach the gate before the radio crackles again. False. Alarm. Someone lost. No threat. I should relax. I don't, because my hand is wrapped around Luca's sleeve, and I hadn't realized I'd reached for him. He looks down. Our eyes meet. I don't let go. Neither does he. We don't speak on the walk back. But when we reach the main hall, something in me shifts, like a decision made without words. Come with me, I say. He follows without question. The piano room smells like polish and dust and memories. I sit on the bench, not to play, just to sit. Luca stands near the door, watchful. You can sit, I tell him. He hesitates. Then he does. Not close, not far, safe. I don't tell people when I'm scared, I say. I know. I don't tell them when I'm angry, or lonely, or when I wake up already tired. He listens. That's all he does. So I keep going. I don't remember the last time someone asked me if I was okay, and actually waited for the answer. My voice wavers. I'm not, I admit. I'm not okay. The words feel like a confession, a weakness, a relief. Luca's hand curls slowly into a fist on his knee. You don't have to be, he says. Someone has to be, I whisper. He looks at me then, really looks at me. I've got you, he says quietly. The room seems to still around us. I know you don't want to hear it, and I know you don't trust Easy. His voice is low, but you don't have to hold everything tonight. I nod, once, and then I do something I've never done before. I reach for him. It's not dramatic. I just place my hand over his. He goes very still, doesn't pull away, doesn't tighten his grip, just lets me be there. My breath stutters. This isn't. I start. I know, he says, but he doesn't move, so neither do I. Later, much later, I realize something. I didn't feel watched in that room. I felt held, not by his arms, by his attention, his stillness, his refusal to leave. And that's the moment everything changes. Because once someone sees how heavy it is, you can't pretend you're carrying it alone anymore. I need to pause here, because this is where I stopped pretending I was in control. Up until that moment, I could tell myself Luca was just doing his job, that his attention was professional, necessary, temporary. But when he looked at me like that, like the weight I carried mattered to him, I realized something had shifted. I wasn't just being protected anymore. I was being seen, and once someone sees you like that, you can't go back to being alone in the same way. Okay, let's get back to my personal dilemma. I never planned to touch him again. That night in the piano room should have been a release, a moment, something small I could file away and forget. But it didn't fade. It stayed. The warmth of his palm under mine, the way he didn't flinch when I leaned into him, the silence thick and steady like it had room for both of us to breathe. I didn't walk away from it, and he didn't let me. The next week blurred around us. Nothing dramatic. No new threats. No gunshots in the dark, or sudden blood on white shirts. Just stillness. Mornings where I opened my door and found him waiting. Afternoons where he stood behind me in meetings. Quiet, unmoving, but close enough that I could feel the weight of his gaze. Evenings where his presence settled into the edges of the house like smoke. Noticeable only if you knew what to look for. And I always looked. I told myself it was habit, but it wasn't. It happened in the study. Late evening. Another meeting. This one longer than it should have been. My father was arguing with Matteo over an alliance I didn't believe in. Everyone had opinions. Everyone had volume. I said nothing. When it was over, they left in a storm of voices and unfinished sentences. I stayed behind, sitting in the corner of the long table, head tilted back, eyes closed. Do you want to be alone? His voice, low, careful. I opened my eyes. Luca stood at the far end of the room, hands behind his back, like distance would keep the moment clean, but I shook my head. No, he didn't speak again, didn't cross the room, just waited. So I stood first. He watched me as I moved, slowly, until there were only a few feet between us, enough space to leave, enough to stay. I looked up at him. You don't talk much, I said. He didn't deny it. Why? He studied me for a moment, then answered in that quiet way of his. Words get misused, rewritten, twisted. And you? I prefer actions. I nodded. My breath was soft in the stillness. And if someone asks for something you shouldn't give, his gaze darkened slowly, steadily. I wait until I'm sure they want it. The silence between us stretched like a held breath. And then, I stepped closer. I shouldn't have. I know that. But something had already unraveled between us. And standing still felt more dangerous than moving forward, so I closed the space, and he let me. My fingers brushed his jacket. He inhaled, low and sharp, but didn't stop me. Didn't speak, didn't touch, just watched. Tell me not to, I whispered. His throat flexed, but he didn't. He didn't move, didn't give in, didn't retreat. So I rose onto my toes and kissed him. It wasn't fast. It wasn't breathless or reckless or heated. It was slow, quiet, intentional. His lips were still at first, then carefully, so carefully he moved. His hand found the side of my waist, steadying me like I might pull away. I didn't. If anything, I leaned in further. His mouth tasted like restraint, like everything he hadn't let himself say. When we parted, his forehead rested against mine. Neither of us spoke. Not at first. I shouldn't have done that, I murmured. His hand was still at my waist. I know, he said, and yet he didn't move. We stood there for a long moment, not kissing, not touching more than that single steady hand, just breathing together, like it was the only way either of us could stay grounded. Eventually, I stepped back. I need to go. His hand dropped, but his eyes didn't leave mine. I turned and walked out of the study without looking back, and he let me. I didn't sleep that night, again, but this time, it wasn't fear or weight or silence that kept me awake. It was the way he'd kissed me, like he didn't know how to stop. The next morning, he wasn't at my door. He was in the garden, back against the stone bench, arms folded across his chest, head tilted toward the clouds like he'd been watching the sky all night. I paused at the top of the steps. He turned toward me. Didn't speak, didn't look away. At breakfast, he stood where he always did, 3 steps behind my chair. At meetings, he took his place beside the door. Silent, unreadable, present. He didn't touch me again, and I didn't ask him to, but something had shifted between us. Everything he did now, every step, every glance, every breath, it all felt heavier, charged, like if I reached for him again, I wouldn't be able to let go. That evening, I stood outside his suite. I didn't knock, I didn't speak, but he opened the door anyway. We stared at each other for a long time. I should have said something. I didn't. I just looked at him and saw something in his face that wasn't there before. Not invitation, permission. I didn't walk in, but I didn't leave either, and he didn't close the door. Later, when I sat in my room alone, I remembered what he'd said. I wait until I'm sure they want it, and now he was waiting again, this time for me. The problem with pretending something doesn't matter is that eventually the world calls your bluff. And in my case, it didn't whisper. It hit hard. The house was tense the next morning. I knew it before I stepped out of my room. The staff moved faster, fewer voices in the halls. Someone had closed the blinds in the front wing, which only happened when something was wrong. Francesca passed me on the stairs, pale, her eyes wide. I stopped her gently. What is it? She shook her head. You should see for yourself. My stomach dropped. In the main hall, my father stood over the security table. Matteo, Antonio, Dominic, all of them gathered, heads low. Elena's voice carried sharp over the others. Why weren't we told? She snapped. If the car tailed them, that's not random, that's targeted. Who was in the car? I asked as I approached. Everyone looked up. No one answered right away. Then Luca, who'd been standing in the back, stepped forward. Sophia. The word landed like glass breaking. I turned slowly. She's fine? She wasn't the target, Luca said. You were. The footage played on loop. A car pulled up just outside the bakery where Sophia had gone for a routine drop. She was alone, which shouldn't have happened. Matteo was late by 3 minutes. The car door opened. The man who stepped out didn't look like a threat. Slacks, collared shirt, unarmed, but his eyes scanned the sidewalk once, passed over Sophia, then focused on someone else. Someone who wasn't there. Me. He pulled something from his coat. Not a gun, a photo. He left it at the edge of the flower stall, just like the one in the piano room. A message, and a warning. This is escalating, Matteo said. We need to move her off-site. No, I said. He turned to me, sharp. Isabella, I'm not being hidden. I'm not a child. She's right, Luca said, voice even. It wouldn't help. I looked at him, and I knew, this wasn't just tactical for him anymore. This was personal. Later that day, I found Luca alone in the courtyard. He was pacing slowly, controlled, but I knew the signs. He was angry. Don't tell me you're fine, I said softly. He stopped, looked at me. I let them get close, he said. You didn't let anything happen. His eyes were hard. It's my job to keep you ahead of this, not reacting after it's already moved. I stepped closer. You've kept me alive. That's not the same as safe. I didn't answer, because he was right. He stepped forward. Not close enough to touch, but close enough that I felt it. You were supposed to be protected. I am. His voice dropped. Not by me. Not anymore. What does that mean? It means I made a choice. I waited. He didn't look away. I care more about you than the rules, he said quietly. More than my orders. More than the line I wasn't supposed to cross. My chest tightened. And now, he added, you're a target. Not just because of your name, but because of me. No, I said. But he just watched me. I kissed you, I said. Not the other way around. I didn't stop you. That silence stretched. We both knew what it meant. It happened that night. The house was locked down, extra security on the gates. Every car checked. Every window watched. But it still wasn't enough. I'd just stepped into the hallway when I heard the crash. Glass. Voices. A guard shouting. Then gunfire. Luca's voice. Isabella, move. I dropped behind the stone pillar in the foyer, as more shots rang out. 2 men, dressed like staff. Through the east door. Everything blurred. Then, Luca, body in front of mine, arms braced, stance wide. He returned fire. 1 down. Then the other. Stillness. Then, blood. Luca. He staggered back. I caught him before he hit the floor. His eyes found mine. You're okay? You're bleeding. It's nothing. He said it through clenched teeth. I pressed my hands to his side. Warm, wet. Help. I screamed. I need someone now. He gripped my arm. Stay with me. You're not dying. I know. But his eyes started to close. Luca, I whispered, voice breaking. Don't you dare. He looked at me, and managed a breath. I'm not going anywhere. Later, the doctor said it was a graze. Clean shot. Deep enough to tear skin, not muscle. He'd be sore. He'd heal. But in that moment, in those seconds when his blood was on my hands, I wasn't thinking about healing. I was thinking about how it would feel to lose him. I sat beside him all night. He wouldn't let them move him to the medical wing, said he wanted to stay where I was. So I brought a chair to the edge of the guest room and didn't sleep. At one point, he opened his eyes. You're still here. Of course I am. You don't have to be. Yes, I said softly. I do. He watched me. Not intensely. Not possessively. Just like I was the one thing in the room he didn't want to blink and miss. Say it again, he said. What? That I'm not dying. I smiled, barely. You're not. He nodded once, then closed his eyes. I stayed until the sky lightened, and even then, I didn't leave, because something in me had already decided. He wasn't just protecting me anymore. He was mine. I didn't go back to my room. After the bleeding stopped, after the adrenaline faded, after the staff stopped circling like panicked birds, I stayed right where I was, in Luca's room. Beside him, his breathing had steadied. His shirt was off. Blood dried at the edges of the bandage along his ribs. He hadn't spoken since the doctor left. He didn't need to. He knew I wasn't going anywhere. The quiet between us was a different kind of silence now. Not distance, not restraint, decision. He watched me with the stillness I'd come to recognize. Alert, steady, waiting for the shift he already knew was coming. I sat on the edge of the bed, facing him. Why didn't you move? I asked. His brow furrowed slightly. What? When they came through the door, you could have dodged. He didn't answer. So I kept going. You could have moved. Let the guard behind you take the hit. You could have pushed me down. You didn't. I had one instinct. he said quietly. Put my body between you and the bullets. He said it like it wasn't remarkable, like it wasn't the kind of thing that rewired the air between two people. I swallowed. You could have died. He nodded. And then, so gently I almost missed it, he reached out and touched my wrist. I didn't. I moved closer, not out of pity, not out of gratitude, out of something slower, heavier, real. He let me. My hand lifted to his chest above the bandage, over his heart, warm, steady. There was nothing possessive about his touch, nothing demanding, only presence. I leaned in slowly, our foreheads brushed. I'm not pretending anymore, I whispered. His breath caught. Good. He kissed me first this time, not like the kiss in the study, uncertain, aching, controlled. This one was full, certain, careful, but sure. He didn't press, didn't rush. He let me come to him, and I did. There were no demands, no tearing clothes, no frantic movement, just his hand at the back of my neck, my breath against his cheek, the heat of our bodies close but not crushing. He guided me gently into his lap, my knees straddling his thighs, his arms circling my waist like he'd always meant to hold me this way. I've got you, he whispered, and he did. He let me lead, every movement slow. His mouth was warm at my throat, his hands reverent on my back. No urgency, just the weight of want, grounded in care. My hands curled into his shoulders, his jaw pressed to my collarbone. When he leaned back against the headboard, I followed, chest to chest, breath sinking. I shouldn't be doing this, I said. He nodded. I know, but I want to. His hands slid up my spine. Then stay. We didn't go further than closeness. No pushing, no expectation, just heat, and breath, and the soft hum of surrender. The kind that doesn't ask permission anymore, because it's already been given. I don't remember falling asleep, but I remember waking up with my face tucked into the side of his neck, his hand resting low on my back, our bodies still aligned like we hadn't moved. He was already awake. His fingers moved slowly through my hair, careful not to disturb. You stayed, he murmured. I nodded against his skin. I didn't want to wake up anywhere else. We didn't speak of it when we got up, not because it didn't matter, because it did. Too much for words. By midday the family knew. I saw it in the way Elena looked at me when I passed her on the stairs, in the way Francesca's hand lingered on my arm, the way Papa said my name with an edge of caution that hadn't been there before. But no one questioned me. No one dared, because they saw the difference in Luca too. The way he didn't stand behind me anymore. He stood beside me, and when he looked at me, it wasn't duty in his expression. It was choice. Later that afternoon, Sophia pulled me aside. I'm not mad, she said. I just want to know. Know what? If it's real. I didn't lie. I didn't deflect. I just nodded. Shimon has exhaled. Then don't be afraid of what comes next. What came next was blood. Again, the perimeter team spotted a car circling 3 times in under an hour. By the time they approached it, the vehicle was gone, but it left a package at the gate. No name, just a note typed. She belongs to us now. You were too slow. And a picture, me and Luca, on the balcony that morning, my hand on his chest, his mouth in my hair. Someone was watching. Luca read it once, then set it down, then looked at me. He didn't speak, but I saw it, the shift. He wasn't just protecting me now, he was preparing to destroy anyone who touched me. That night, he moved into my wing of the house. No one said a word, because they knew. The decision had been made, the line was crossed, and now we were all in. Wait a minute, this is the moment I should have walked away. I didn't, and I need you to hear what happened next, because once I let him hold me like that, I stopped pretending I'd ever be safe without him again. Let's continue the story. There are lines you cross quietly, not with a kiss, not even with a touch, but with a promise. Unspoken, bone deep, permanent. That's what Luca gave me the night he moved into my wing of the house. He didn't bring a bag, just his body, his presence. And when I opened the door to the suite I rarely used, the one closest to mine, he stepped inside without asking. No questions, no hesitation. He locked the door behind him, not to keep others out, but to show me that this was his post now. The room wasn't decorated, just the essentials. A bed, a chair, a single drawer. He looked around once, then turned back to me. I'll stay in here. I nodded, but I didn't leave. Instead, I stepped toward him. His hands found my waist like he'd already memorized the curve of it. I didn't speak. I just leaned in, pressed my forehead to his chest, and let myself feel the rise and fall of his breath. I don't know what this is, I whispered, or where it ends. He brushed his mouth over the top of my head. It doesn't, he said. From that point on, he was mine, not in a possessive way, not in the way our world usually understands ownership. He was mine, in the way shadows belong to light, in the way safety belongs to silence. He didn't guard me anymore. He chose me, and that changed everything. We didn't announce it, but everyone knew. The staff adjusted. The guards stepped back. My father didn't question it out loud, but I felt the disapproval in every sideways glance. I didn't care, because Luca started walking beside me everywhere. He didn't lower his eyes anymore when we passed through public spaces. He didn't retreat when I reached for his hand. He didn't hide. We were at the Bellini compound the first time I saw him kill for me. A meeting, a formality, one of many. I wasn't nervous, until the doors locked behind us and the air turned sharp. Someone on their side thought a message needed to be sent. I wasn't supposed to walk out untouched. They moved fast. Luca moved faster. I don't remember all of it, only the sound. Gunfire, 2 shots, then silence. One man on the floor, one gun still in Luca's hand. His arm didn't even shake. His other hand pressed to the small of my back, anchoring me to the wall behind him. "You're safe," he said, and I believed him. Afterward, my father didn't speak to me for 2 days, not because of the blood, because I didn't stop it, because I didn't pull away from Luca's protection, because I let myself be claimed, and made it clear I had no intention of giving him up. That night, Luca didn't sleep in the suite next to mine. He slept in my bed, fully clothed, one hand over my hip, his breath steady at the back of my neck. He didn't press, didn't reach for more. He just stayed, like he had nothing left to prove, because he already knew he belonged there. In the early hours, I turned to face him. He was awake. "I can't undo this," I whispered. "I don't want you to, but if they push back, I'll push harder." His hand brushed my cheek. "I wasn't made for softness," he said, "but I can give it to you." He kissed me then, not in hunger, but in vow, and I let go of the last piece of myself I'd been holding back. When he made love to me, it was quiet, slow, like he was learning me through every breath. His hands moved with patience, reverence. My shirt slipped from my shoulders. His mouth traced the path without urgency, without demand. Every movement was a question, and my body was the answer. There was nothing rushed about it, nothing showy, no dominance, no performance, only stillness, warmth. His forehead pressed to mine, his voice a whisper against my lips. "You're mine," and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel trapped by those words. I felt sheltered. Later, wrapped in his arms, I asked the question I'd been holding. Was it always like this? He didn't pretend not to understand. "Yes," he said. I looked up at him. He met my gaze without flinching. "I watched you carry everything," he continued. "I waited for someone to take the weight, and no one did." "No," he said, "so I did." I buried my face in his chest. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I knew you needed more than words." That was the night I stopped fighting the inevitable. Luca wasn't my bodyguard. He was my shelter, my fireline, my only escape from the storm I'd learned to live inside. He didn't just protect me anymore. He belonged to me, and I let myself belong to him. Everything changed after that night. Not loudly, not with fanfare, but quietly, like the way a tide shifts without asking your permission. Luca didn't leave my bed. He didn't step back into the shadow. He stood beside me now, and no one questioned it anymore. My father never said the words, but I could see it in the way he spoke to Luca now. Less command, more caution, respect. He saw what I saw, that Luca wasn't just guarding me. He'd chosen me, and I'd chosen him back. The family settled into a new rhythm. The threats quieted. The man who sent the photos was never officially found. But one of our informants caught word. A body dumped at the edge of the city, a symbol carved into the wrist, a warning to anyone else who might try. I never asked Luca if it was him. I didn't need to. Some justice isn't loud. Some of it is just done. One morning, I stood on the terrace with my coffee, watching the sisters in the garden. Lucia and Gianna were laughing. Elena was talking with Valentina. Francesca and Sofia sat on the steps, heads tipped together, shoulders pressed close. They looked safe. Still, for once I wasn't scanning the edges of the property. I wasn't counting guards or calculating risk. I was just breathing, arms slipped around my waist from behind. "Luca, warm, solid, quiet. You're watching them," he murmured. "I always do. They're not alone anymore." I leaned back into him. "Neither am I." Later that week, I sat across from my father in his study. He watched me with a long, unreadable gaze. "You've changed," he said. "I've grown." He nodded slowly. "You were always meant to lead them," he said, "but now you know you don't have to do it alone." I didn't answer, because I didn't need to. He already knew. That night, I found Luca in my room, standing at the window with the moonlight on his face. He looked over his shoulder. "Do you miss the way it was?" "No," I said. He turned fully to face me. "I miss less sleep," I added with a soft smile. He walked to me, took my hand, kissed my palm. "We're not going backward," he said. "I know." His thumb traced a slow circle at my wrist. "You trust me now." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "Yes," he nodded. "Then I'll never give you a reason not to. Some people think love is loud, that it's about grand gestures and dramatic confessions, but for me, it was a man who stood quietly in every hallway I didn't ask him to. A man who put his body between me and the gun. A man who waited for me to see him not just as a protector, but as mine. We still don't talk about forever. Not yet, but sometimes he reads the reports before I do. Sometimes I fall asleep with my face in his chest and wake up in the same place. And sometimes when I'm not looking, he brushes my hair back and kisses the side of my head like he's memorizing the shape of this piece. It's not perfect, but it's ours. The world doesn't get to take me now, because I've already been claimed. Thank you for listening to my story. I carried my family's name like armor, but in the end, what saved me wasn't power. It was quiet love, careful touch, a man who stood close when I stopped pretending I didn't need someone. If this story stayed with you, tell me. Tell me where you were listening from. Tell me if you felt safe with him too. My sister Sophia's story is coming next. She was never meant to be noticed, but someone watched her anyway. See you in the next one.